Over 7 million different animals inhabit our planet.
The thing about the Kākāpō, Angie, which makes it even more unique compared to a lot of birds, is, like we said, this is a big bird.
What can they teach us?
So researchers think this low metabolic rate has developed over time because they are flightless, right? So they don't need that crazy, intense...
Many species are in crisis and need your help. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.
Welcome to All Creatures Podcast. This is Chris.
And I'm Angie.
The Kākāpō. Finally. This has been on the list for a long time, and we finally are getting to it. For some reason, I don't know why it took this long.
The Kākāpō is not only the only flightless parrot in the world, but it's also nocturnal and it's giant.
It's big.
And several other real oddities, making it a weird but undeniably cute parrot.
Well, we're going to learn a lot about this bird and conservation, island conservation. The thing is, the Kākāpō is one of the most unique birds on Earth, like Angie was just saying, and it's critically endangered. Today, there's only 202 total birds left on the latest census of Kākāpō, and there is a very focused conservation effort going on here in New Zealand to save the Kākāpō, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. But and we are learning a lot about trying to bring this species back from the brink that we can use around the world to save some of these very critically endangered birds and other animals on some of the strategies they're using. So stay tuned. It's just going to be such a fun bird, like so many fun behaviors.
Yes, Chris, the Kākāpō is a lek breeding parrot. And so we're going to talk all about leks today. And it's just tons of fun facts. So yes, I hope you'll stick around because it's going to be a fun one.
And this also has a very special place in my heart, not just because it's here in New Zealand and it's just such a amazing species, but this was requested by my brother Joe over 2 years ago. And I love my brother very much. There was no reason we haven't done this because I kept saying, Angie, we got to do Kākāpō. Joe wants Kākāpō. But my brother just celebrated his birthday, so I do want to wish him a happy birthday and dedicate this podcast to him. And we wanted to do a New Zealand species because my partner Pippa has finally gotten into the country as the borders have opened with COVID. And we haven't talked a lot, and Angie and I don't talk a lot about our personal lives on the podcast. Obviously, it's all about the animals.
I mean, I do make a lot of jokes about my family.
Oh, I do. I make fun about kids and stuff. Yeah. But I haven't seen my partner in a year and a half. And her and I have maintained our relationship from afar.
Thank goodness for Zoom, right?
I know. Yeah, that kept us going. It was very hard, but we didn't know when I left her back in the UK that it would be this long because we didn't know where the COVID pandemic was going to take us. But with the Delta wave and the Omicron wave around the world, it has kept us apart. And finally, she's gotten in the country. So the last couple weeks, we've been moving and back in each other's arms, and I'm showing her this amazing country. So I want to dedicate this episode to her as well.
Yes, Pip, we love you. We're glad you're in New Zealand. Yes. And I know that she wanted us to do the Kākāpō as well, right?
Yes. Yep. She did. So, but Joe, this one is definitely for you, bro. I know he listens too. He always listens and sends me text messages.
Okay, that was such a great interview. To let my siblings know that your siblings listen because
I know. Tell your sister what's going on and your brother. All right. So a few weeks ago, we had a little known guest called Dr. Richard Dawkins.
Yes, and several of my friends have emailed me about that one. Like, whoa, you go, girl! All my zoology friends and zoo friends. So yes, that was so fun. And yes, he talked a lot about the Kākāpō in his book Flights of Fancy, which is available now in the United States. It had a release in the UK a couple months back, but it's finally available in the United States, and you can find the information for it on our show notes because Chris and I are obviously huge fans of the book.
Oh yeah, it was a beautiful book. It's an amazing book. And he brought up this quote from Douglas Adams, who wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? I've got to read that book. That's like such a classic.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's a classic book. All right. So Doug Adams said about the Kākāpō, said the Kākāpō is an extremely fat bird. Very true. We're going to find out about that. A good sized adult will weigh about 6 or 7 pounds. 6 or 7 pounds. That's small.
No wonder they can't fly, right?
Yeah, that's a very fat chicken, probably, right? I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Or medium-sized cat, even.
Yeah, it's
small,
big. It's a big bird, and its wings are just about good for waggling a bit if it thinks it's about to trip over something. But flying is out of the question, and this is where Richard Dawkins came in and gave this quote. Sadly, however, it seems that not only has the Kākāpō forgotten how to fly, but it has forgotten that it has forgotten how to fly. So it can't fly. This bird cannot fly. Apparently, a seriously worried Kākāpō will sometimes run up a tree and jump out of it, whereupon it flies like a brick and lands in a graceless heap on the ground. And it's Douglas Adams fell in love when he saw the Kākāpō many decades ago when there was not many left on Earth. This bird is not graceful. Yes, it does. It parachutes to the ground.
I was going to say they have a term for that behavior called parachuting, which I feel like a parachute would be a little bit more graceful, but
not the Kākāpō. No, this thing is the cutest thing, Angie. It just really quick. I just want to say thank you to our Patreon supporters. I'm going to make this really, really quick because we have a very long podcast to go. Your support means the world to us. Now that Pip's in the country, we're going to be coming out with some more things. I think Angie and I'm just going to put it out here now, Angie, so we can commit to it. Angie and I are going to try to do a live each month with our Patreon followers, just to have a one-on-one or just a Q&A where they can come on and talk to us over Zoom. Let us know some species that they want us to do and get more intimate with that. So that's coming now that Pip's in the country, and the cavalry has arrived to help me with the boys. So, but describe this bird, this darling, amazing, beautiful,
so darling.
Yeah, parrot.
Well, Chris, I think the best way to start with a Kākāpō is just looking at it straight on. It has this round facial disc of feathers that look like an owl. In fact, one of its nicknames, or it's also known as an owl parrot in some places. And then within this disc, there's a little bit of a coloration pattern because it's lighter colors around its face, being like a cream, yellow, light brown, tan color feathers. And then most of its plumage, most of its feathers throughout the whole body are green in color with a little bit of dark brown splotches in them and some yellow to tannish highlights. But around the face is this little bit lighter tan to yellow color. And then it has a very distinctive wide patch of feathers that are green that run down the middle of its forehead, almost looking like a wide mohawk, if you will. And then running down the throat and the breast, the Kākāpō's feathers are going to be soft. Also this molted yellow-green color as well. But it's the bill that really strikes me for the Kākāpō. Mm-hmm. It's chubby. I don't know if it's not a very scientific definition, but very distinctive. And I think if you once you see a Kākāpō's face, you'll never forget it because it's just so distinct. They also have pretty large feet, typical parrot feet being that they're like scaled, and they have 2 toes facing forward and 2 toes facing backwards. And the claws are really strong. We'll talk a lot about that in behavior because they do a ton of tree climbing. Even though they can't fly, they spend a lot of time in the trees. Sometimes they parachute down, but most of the time they climb down. Mm-hmm. So really distinctively big feet and claws compared to other owls. And then lastly, I have to mention their whiskers. So the beak is surrounded by delicate feathers that look like or act as whiskers do on a cat, Vibraceae. And researchers aren't sure why they developed this, but they think it's because they're mostly nocturnal and it helps them sense things on the ground. But completely unique for a parrot, and even for birds in general, to have this whisker like set of feathers around their beak, which are really distinct and also make the Kākāpō just darling and very cute, in my opinion.
It's very unique. It's a very unique looking, parrot. It just is. It is so charismatic. That's why I think people fall in love with it. Yeah,
I know, Chris, and I've been lucky enough to work with a couple different species of flighted parrots, and just looking at this face, I'm like, I need to know one. And the more I research Kākāpōs, and you'll talk a lot about this in conservation and how there's not very many of them, and they are. It's wonderful. The New Zealand government's doing a great job monitoring them and working with helping their breeding programs so they can be successful and reproduce as much as they possibly can in a safe way. But some researchers have mentioned that working with them and knowing the animals, that they have huge personalities.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, that's very normal for people that work with parrots or birds in general. But yeah, just looking at this headshot, I need to know a Kākāpō. That's the Cliff Notes version. So
I definitely
that's
will
your
see
job.
them.
You're in New Zealand. You gotta do it, buddy.
I know. You told me because it's like, oh, I want to get you down here around Christmas time. You're like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, well, what if I have a Kākāpō at the zoo nearby?
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Okay, on your way. Sorry, John. You get the kids. I'm on my way to New Zealand.
I mean, seriously, like I added to my bucket list, and it probably won't happen, but when I get to lekking behavior and what the males do to congregate and what they do to attract a female, I mean, the researchers that get to study that, it's just, I want to be one of them in my next life. Or if you're out there listening and you study parrots, like study Kākāpō lekking behavior, you're welcome.
Okay, so I will tell Jesse, because Jesse, I was going to mention this at some point. Jesse was going to have an opportunity. I don't know if he's going to take it or not in the next, I think, 6 to 8 weeks, to go down to Codfish Island and work there for 2 weeks and see Kākāpō, because we're going to talk about here in a second where they're located. Because again, only over 200 left on Earth, and that's it. And they are very protected here in New Zealand. A team of researchers are protecting them, studying them, breeding them. And so Jesse had an opportunity to go down there. And if he doesn't go this round, he's definitely going to go the next time they're able to do that. So I will get you with Jesse and say, Jesse, how do you get on that project? And we'll get you here.
Everybody needs an assistant or an intern.
It does. Somebody needs to cook. So
that's right.
It's like you go down there and work, and they'll take you around. So the thing about the Kākāpō, Angie, which makes it even more unique compared to a lot of birds, is, like we said, this is a big bird. They can stand up to 2 feet, up to 64 centimeters. I mean, that is a big parrot. The males can weigh up to 8 pounds, anywhere from 4 to 8 pounds, or up to 4 kilograms. The females, much less. I mean, there is some sexual dimorphism there where the females are only 2 to 3 pounds, not quite as tall or big. But they were called the world's fattest parrot, because
I like chubby.
Well, it's official. They're the world's fattest parrot.
Big bone. That's what my mom used to say about me. Oh, honey, you're just big boned.
You're like a waif. Oh my God. You were running
athletic.
Stairs. Yes, you were not big boned. You are a waif.
I think medium boned. No, I think I am definitely medium boned, but it's good. It makes me strong.
No, you're tiny. And anyway, compared to me, you are tiny. On average, they weigh about 14 more ounces, or about 400 grams, than a flying parrot. So, because the largest flying parrot, which is the hyacinth macaw. Mm-hmm. So these birds, and this is what's so interesting about their story, is they live in very cold parts of the world here in New Zealand. Today, most of them live just off the South Island, islands off the South Island of New Zealand. And so they've evolved to lose this ability to fly. So they're still like a species in transition in evolution, that, they still have wings, like kiwi. When we talked about flightless birds, the kiwi still has nubules for wings, right? But they don't have a flappy wing like the Kākāpō does. So the Kākāpō is still in transition to this ground-dwelling animal. But That's why I think they get so heavy, is because they put on so much fat. And we're going to talk about that, to survive in these cold environments. So when you look at their range, the historical range of Kākāpō was all over New Zealand,
right?
North and South Islands.
Yeah, both islands. Yeah.
Yeah. But scientists were not able to really document them until the Europeans got here in the mid 1800s. So before the Maori, which we've covered in many New Zealand animal podcasts, and I actually have a special guest. I hope, I'm organizing an interview. I should be able to talk to him this week to talk more about New Zealand natural history. And you should look for that in the next couple of weeks, if everything goes right. But before the Maori got here about 800 years ago, Kākāpō were everywhere. Moa were everywhere. Flightless, almost like an ostrich. The elephant bird's bigger, but the moa was one of the world's largest birds. The host eagle, which was the largest raptor ever to live, was roaming. Plus, I think about another 30-something bird species. Then the Maori came, the Polynesians came to New Zealand, incidentally brought Pacific rats. And these Pacific rats, which I'm going to talk about here in a second in conservation of the Kākāpō, is devastating to flightless birds, or birds that are ground dwelling. So Kākāpō were probably everywhere, probably running around where I live now. But when they started taking census, there were pockets of them in the North Island. And then on the western side of the South Island, because remember, New Zealand's like 1,000 islands, but the two main ones, the North and the South Island. So the South Island, Kākāpō were pretty much everywhere in the 1800s. But over time, that diminished until the 1970s and 80s. They were completely eliminated on both islands, the North and the South Island. All right, today, so those 200 Kākāpō are on 3 islands. So you have Codfish Island, which is the big one. There's the Little Barrier Island. So the Codfish Island and Little Barrier Island are south of the South Island. So it's a lot of north and south. I'm sorry. This is confusing.
Well, we just have to remember this. Further south you go in New Zealand, the colder it gets.
Oh, God, yeah. You're subantarctic. I mean, you're
right.
getting to subantarctic. So the South Island, which was like Rohan and Lord of the Rings, we have the fjords, we have the glaciers, very beautiful biome.
Now you're just showing off.
I live in the Shire, so I'm in North Island. So on the south of the South Island, it's Anchor Island and Codfish Island. Codfish Island is where I think most of the Kākāpō are. Then near Auckland, near me, is the Little Barrier Island, and there are a small population there too. So that's it. They live on these 3 little islands, and they're naturally want to live in these dense native forests that we have here, but with human expansion, not much of that's left. So.
And when were they transferred to the islands? Was it in the 80s, right?
Yeah. I'm going to go into that here in a second and talk about how they were transferred there, the last remaining population, because in the 1970s, there was only, by the 1970s, there was only 18 Kākāpō that they knew about. And they were in the Fjordlands, which is like the Glacier Bay and all that stuff we have here. And they were all males. So, and I know you're going to talk about that. But they thought the species was heading towards extinction. They're like, there's nothing we can do. Then on Stewart Island, which is south of the South Island, it's subantarctic, almost subantarctic. Stewart Island in the late 70s, they found a population of a couple hundred of them with females. And that's the only reason they're left today. So...
It's incredible. Yeah, incredible conservation efforts.
Yeah. And
they've been moved to these predator-free islands, right? So,
well, that's what I was going to talk about next. I mean, why care, right?
I have a million reasons, but yes.
Do you want to list some of them before I go?
I mean, their conservation story and just their incredible physiology and their unique niche as a parrot, as a flightless parrot, and how they were doing just fine. I mean, looking at some of the literature about even when European settlers came over here, I mean, they were everywhere. They said that you could like shake a tree and they would just fall out of a tree, any tree, pick a tree. And also how for the Maori, the Kākāpō was so culturally significant and still is for the indigenous people of New Zealand. It was a really important source of food and then feathers. And I mean, obviously they don't have that anymore. It's a real shame that their numbers dwindled so heavily from the introduction to all these different unwanted predators.
Well, yeah, one of the big ones is the stoats. When they brought rabbits, the Europeans brought rabbits with them, let them loose. And we still have rabbits. I see them, at the Hamilton Gardens where I live. And they brought stoats and weasels to control the rabbit population. But unfortunately, those stoats and weasels have just decimated the flightless birds, the kiwi.
And it's so interesting that you mentioned rabbits because one author I was reading was suggesting that before this mass extinction of the Kākāpō, that they were the most successful herbivore in the New Zealand islands, and that they were like the rabbits of of New Zealand, right. How rabbits are to North America. I mean, they were everywhere, and then to have a population less than 100 or whatever it is, they actually ended up moving and protecting.
And saving. And they brought the stoats. The only reason they brought them in was because the rabbits were like eating up all the sheep pastures. It wasn't for the Kākāpō. It was like, in the 1800s, our sheep can't eat. So let's bring these things in to control the rabbits that we brought in. And it was like in Australia, the rabbits are the number one problem over there of invasive species. Well, Angie, continuing on with the Kākāpō and the islands are extinction epicenters, and there's a lot of studies out there. Just under 10% of all the extinct or animals heading towards extinctions are coming from islands. Where it's just a mass. These small concentrated areas, when you introduce the rats and snakes at Guam or some of these other species that don't belong there, they are devastating to the Galapagos Islands, the goats and stuff.
Well, there's nowhere for the animals to go. I mean, and arguably like the Kākāpō, and I know you talk about this in evolution, but they did a great job millions of years ago when they were like, hey, we are flying parrot, but we're competing against other flying birds. So here in New Zealand, and so maybe it's just better if we stick to the ground, right? Yeah. So, but then now they're on the, and they were safe on the ground because there weren't those predators there. Yeah. So, yeah.
No, well, that's good. That's a great point because what they did, they did very well. They found their niche. And millions of years ago, they were flying, but they lost that ability to fly because, like you said, they became these herbivores on the ground. The only predators they really had was like the New Zealand falcon, the Haast eagle, and I think there was a couple others that are now extinct of raptors that hunted during the day and hunt by sight, right? And the Kākāpō blends in very well, these dense forests. So the Kākāpō evolved to be nocturnal and ground dwelling, where in the forest where these raptors had a very, very difficult time finding them. But when you brought in stoats and rats and weasels and possums from Australia, not the American possum, but not the America opossum, it's possums from Australia, they find these Kākāpō nests easy. They hunt at night. That's when the Kākāpō is busy. The nests stink, so the mammals can find them. They go in and kill the chicks, eat the eggs, or even take down an adult Kākāpō. So that's where they completely disappeared on the North Island by the 1930s. And then, like we said, the South Islands in the 1980s. So when they did find these birds on Stewart Island in 1977, that is when, we have a population we can save. So New Zealand started in the 1980s and 1990s to transfer the known birds to Codfish Island, which is off the coast of Stewart Island. And that's because Stewart Island had a population of cats that were devastating to native Kākāpō. So we do have a problem with feral cats here, like everywhere in the world.
Of course.
Yeah, they're really devastating. So what New Zealand has done, and they're leading the world in this effort, is they're going, because we have so many islands and so many small islands and atolls and everything off our coast, is we're going and eliminating all of the pests that and the invasive mammals on there to keep them pest free or predator free, free from mammalian predators. And what they've done, and I hope to talk to my guest, up and coming guest, talk about this a little bit more in depth, is take our endangered species and stick them on these islands that do not have any predators. Now, we still have problems, though. It's funny, like this one island off Auckland, I forgot the name of it. I climbed it. It's like an extinct volcano. It was pest free, but now all of a sudden they found evidence of like 3 or 4 stoats on there, and they don't know how they get there.
Oh, geez.
Like, how do they get there? Are they, because they are tourists coming back and forth. It's not tourists bringing them in.
Are they swimming on those or
boats? Are they getting on the boats? Are they swimming?
Or rafting?
Yeah.
Right, isn't it the vegetation raft
yes.
to talk about?
Yeah, yeah. We did. So it's an ongoing battle. And one of the great episodes we did, I know this is so long ago, but episode 49 is such a good listen if you're really interested in island conservation and what New Zealand's doing and other organizations. But I interviewed Theo Van Noort, and it was Sub-Antarctic Conservation on the Antipodes. This is a well worth a listen, very interesting interview. He was on the last trip there in 2018 to confirm, it was between 2017 and 2018, that all the mice and rats were eradicated on this island because it was devastating to native birds, nesting, and native insects and other species. So New Zealand and WWF and others went and eliminated these pests on the Antipodes, and we're doing this all around New Zealand, and it's working. It's working. So very well worth the listen. So the goal is to create these island sanctuaries. So right now, New Zealand, 117 islands off our coast have been declared pest-free. And they're still working on some others. But like the Tuatara, we talked about that. Oh, they're extinct on the mainland. Mm-hmm. There's certain protected areas. I've seen them. I've told you that. I've seen Tuatara in some of these protected areas.
Yes, you sent photos. It was awesome.
Yeah. So, they're off on these islands, surviving, and their populations are going up. So that's what's keeping the Kākāpō safe and healthy. And, we'll try to get Angie down there so she can go look at some of this lacking behavior. And the rumor is Kākāpō might be coming to the mainland New Zealand in the coming years because the islands are burgeoning with Kākāpō, and they're looking for places to move them to increase size. So like Sanctuary Mountain, where I've talked about plenty of times on this podcast in the New Zealand episodes, it's just about 45 minutes south of me, is one of the world's largest pest-free, has predator-proof fencing all around. I saw Kākā, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, which is the relative of the Kākāpō, which is a New Zealand parrot. Amazing. So when you do come here and visit, I'm going to take you guys there, you and John, and we'll go hike around.
I love it.
Yeah. So, that's just kind of a snapshot of what's going on with Kākāpō and Kākāpō conservation. And like I said, New Zealand is doing an amazing job leading the world, one of the leaders in the world in island conservation. We're trying to get rid of all of these stoats, weasels, rats, possums by 2050. I see bait boxes all over the place. I go out to conservation areas, and where they have baited, where they have eliminated or reduced populations of predators, a lot of the native birds are coming back. Like the tui is a big one. That's a good species that's coming back. My old house I just moved out of, I heard a tui for the first time in 2 years, squawking. They're really unique bird to New Zealand, because they're doing well around the gardens, and I think they were radiating out. And so when you see these native species rebounding, it's a good story. It's a really good story.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'll keep talking because I got to get to behavior and repro because there's so much cool stuff for Angie to talk about. Talking about their evolution, the Dracula parrot, I think it was the last parrot we did back in October. So that was a good, 8 months ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a fun one, though.
Yeah. So birds, over 10,000 species. The order of parrots is Psittaciformes. Did I say that right?
No.
No, I did not. It's citizens.
I don't have it in front of me.
Citizens. They're citizens.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Citizeniforms. And all of our birders,
Mm-hmm.
all of our birders are like, oh
I
my
know.
God,
I apologize for me for being lazy and not having it on my screen, and Chris for his enunciation.
I butchered it. Citizens. I remember you telling me that years ago. I want an expert. Okay. Almost 400 species of parrots.
Right.
And then,
yeah.
And then we talked about, you had the true parrots, the cockatoos, and then the New Zealand parrots in orders. So the Psittacodia, true parrots, the cockatoos, and then the Stringopodia is the New Zealand parrots. Fun family. I know I bragged about the Kia when we were talking about bird intelligence, because the Kia is seen as one of the world's smartest birds.
We talked a lot about that. Yeah. I think in our even in parrot episodes.
Yeah, in the crow episode, we talked kind of about that. The Kia is the only alpine parrot species on Earth, so we'll have to cover them at some point. And then you have the North and South Island kaka, which they're endangered, and I did see them. I've seen them flying. I think I told that story. I walked around a corner and I scared one out of the tree. I think I put that on Instagram, but now that Pip's here, we'll be getting busy on Instagram again, and I'll try to post that video again. But it was so cute. I turned the corner, scared the heck out of it, because I was like face to face with it. It falls out of the tree almost, or falls upside down. It's squawking, mad at me. And I just was filming and backed up, but the kaka was beautiful. And then you have the Kākāpō, which is critically endangered. So the genus of the Kākāpō is Strigops, and their species name is Strigops habroptilus. So that's their species, the only species in their genus, and the only, obviously, species in their family. Kākāpō evolution, birds emerged 160 million years ago. The oldest parrot dates back about 80 million years ago from a dinosaur relative. Some of our oldest fossils are coming from Denmark around the time when the dinosaurs went extinct. And the old world parrots, as we know them today, was emerging maybe about 60 million years ago, like after the dinosaurs went out. And that's when the species that did survive, like parrots or some of these birds, they were able to boom because the dinosaurs were gone. Right. And they were able to find food and breed and not be preyed upon. Like mammals, they just, boom, radiated out. And that was from Australasia. So that's where parrots came from. And then the New World parrots emerged about 50 million years ago. And the closest relative to parrots are the passerines, which are songbirds. So the specific evolution of Kākāpō is interesting, Angie, because I don't need to go into New Zealand that much, because there's other episodes where people can listen and learn more about it. But basically, New Zealand broke off 85 million years ago, just a small bit of island and sticking out of the ocean that eventually became this major landmass. And I think New Caledonia is also part of us, Zealandia. So the Kākāpō diverged from the Kia or Kaka lineage about 60 million years ago. So
wow,
these animals here in New Zealand, we've been isolated for millions of years.
When we talk about why care, just so unique and on their own path. And, I know we talk a lot, oh, they're weird. And they are different than a New World parrot. But
they're
there's
ancient.
Good reason for it. And they've been doing it, perfecting it for a long time.
They're ancient. They've been on their own for 80 million years almost. 60 to 80 million years.
With their little whiskers and their fat feet. Mm-hmm.
Well, they weren't in that form yet. But they were,
I know.
They were flying around. But then they split off from the Kia. Mm-hmm. And then they did, like you've talked about. And I think right now we're seeing if we let evolution keep going for another 10, 20 million years, you're seeing a bird that's eventually going to be this fat little parrot with no wings, like a kiwi, walking around, doing its thing. But with us, who knows, with us banging in there in the picture. But you're right. They are ancient. They are ancient. And Just to leave off before we jump into some physiology facts and then we can get to behavior and repro, I'm going to delve into this a little bit more, but I want to introduce this study here. And it was deep macroevolutionary impacts of humans on New Zealand's unique avifauna. It was recently in Current Biology 2019. And I want to delve more into this study later and maybe talk about this at a later date, not just for New Zealand, but for other places around the planet. But the authors concluded from this study that nature would need at least 50 million years to return to the number of species that were present in New Zealand before humans arrived.
Wow, that's a very impactful number.
Years,
Yikes.
Yes. Because of all the species that have gone
humans.
extinct. Yeah. And, I'm going to talk to my guest here. The Maori did cause some extinctions. I mean, the moa went extinct, Haas eagle went extinct. Some other species went extinct because of these Pacific rats. Then the Europeans came, and then that really caused a big impact. Where the Kākāpō is almost extinct, the kiwis almost extinct, because of human pressure. So you would need to remove humans from New Zealand, and it's going to take 50 million years to get back to where it was 700 years ago before humans stepped foot here. That's insane. And then they said if you let all these species go extinct, like the Kākāpō, or many species of kiwi, you'd add 10 more million years to that. So I was very surprised at the long-term impacts, how long it would take to restore diversity because of human impact on the planet. So, anyways, that's why we do this. That's why we educate. That's why you listen. You should put fire in your belly. Okay, what am I going to do today to help the planet?
Well, absolutely, Chris. I think you made a very great case about why we should care about the Kākāpō. And I think that I have a fire in my belly after reading their conservation story and then looking at their face. Yeah. And then after that, just learning about all of their really cool physiology and just how unique they are. It doesn't stop with, okay, they can't fly and they're a parrot. Mm-hmm. There's so much more. Their whiskers. There's so much more. And and it was really shocking to me, Chris, that they are probably the longest living parrot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Lifespans of up to 100 years, some researchers think.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that parrots live old, so that's why I'm always very hesitant to encourage anybody to get a parrot as a pet, or really any bird for that matter. But do your homework because, or you might be putting your parrot in your will, and so you have to think if that's the most fair thing for them. But that was super fascinating, right? I mean, just so much with these guys as far as just fun facts.
And we can learn from them. I mean, you and I, in the Dracula parrot, we talked about it, is parrots live a lot longer for their body size and metabolism compared to any other species on Earth. And they're studying the genetics of them, and that the parrots have special abilities to repair DNA, slow down cell death, to stress, all this stuff, and cancers. We have so much we can learn from them. So much.
Oh, absolutely, Chris. And the Kākāpō is no exception. In fact, their metabolism, they're like, they have a very low basal metabolic rate, mm-hmm. and much lower than any other parrot species. Yeah. And so researchers think this low metabolic rate has developed over time because they are flightless, right? So they don't need that crazy, intense metabolism to get those pectoral muscles firing for the flight. But also, compared to flighted birds, the Kākāpō, even though we're talking about them often being chubby, because they can be when their food is plentiful, but they can also survive on very low quality food or little food sources and still survive. And that's partly because of this low metabolic rate. And when I talk about their breeding behavior, we'll find out that the males are incredible and they don't eat until they breed up and down the river as many females as they can find. Yes. And just really, really fascinating physiological adaptations.
Well, it's like it's like the tuatara, which is a completely unique reptile. It's not a lizard; it's a reptile. We laughed about that a couple weeks ago. The Kākāpō, the tuatara has a very, very slow metabolism. This is a reptile that loves the cold, lives in the cold, survives in the cold. Here's a parrot that we do have some tropical like birds living in the subantarctic. We have a thing called like the Antipodes parakeet, which is living in the Antarctic. I mean, subantarctic islands, it's freezing cold. So the Kākāpō, that's why it's so fat. It puts on so much fat, which leads me to my next point. Talking about them not being able to fly. Again, you're seeing this transition. So their wings don't have muscle, but instead that's where they store fat. And like you said, the slow metabolism allows them to store fat off plants, which we know as scientists, do with nutrition. Plants don't have a lot of fat. I mean, there's not a lot of fat or extra calories. I guess there's a lot of starch and sugar, but so it'd be interesting to study their metabolism, how they store that as fat. But the other thing was, we talk about birds and the keel, which is
their modified breast. Yeah, their modified breastbone.
Yeah, which we see in like turkeys, in America.
Sure, very prominent.
Yes, or even in chickens where that keel is where the flight muscles attach and allow birds to fly. The
pectoralis.
Yeah. The Kākāpō lost that keel. So they have nowhere where any flight muscles can attach. And then you talk about their feathers. So you're right, the Maori. Kākāpō actually in Maori means night parrot. I meant to say that in the beginning. And very good point. They're very important culturally, the cultural significant to the people here. And their feathers were very important to them. So the Kākāpō feathers are much softer than birds that fly. They're not stiff. They're soft, like downy feathers that keep them warm. So yeah, it's just, they're fascinating, Angie.
Yeah, well, and their vision is really good. Their sense of smell is very good, which are important adaptations if you are going to be a nocturnal animal, right? Vision is obvious. And of course, the Kākāpō stands out, even with their sense of smell compared to other birds. Has a very large olfactory bulb, and the ratio of the olfactory bulb to the brain is very large. And it indicates that much larger ratio compared to other parrots, that it has a great sense of smell.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, the Kākāpō also secretes a very distinct smell. And it's been described as a musty sweet odor. So I need you or Jesse to sniff a Kākāpō.
You're going to go. You're going to do it. You're going to
put it in a jar and mail it to me so I can smell a Kākāpō, darn it.
We got to get to New Zealand somehow. So
yeah. But it's supposedly very, very distinct. And in fact, a researcher suggests that unfortunately this distinct odor is helpful for all these predators that were introduced to the islands and making them very, very easily hunted. Yeah. In fact, I think hunters would even train dogs hundreds and hundreds of years ago to be able to smell them out and find them. And they were so vulnerable to that they didn't know it was coming. I looked into it a little bit. I'm not sure what the evolutionary reason would be for this musty sweet odor, perhaps breeding purposes, but I'm not sure. But it has not served them well. That's true.
Well, is it that's how they find each other, and but yeah, I mean it's predators have just devastated things here, Angie. I see it, I hear it, I read it, I'm living it here. It's like there's bait everywhere. I'm living in this place on Earth where you're living in Florida. I mean, you have Burmese pythons and
we have everything. I mean, my goodness. I think I saw a tegu the other day. I'm like, it
talk
ran
about
really
invasive
fast
species
across this country road, and I'm thinking that looked pretty big. Maybe it was a young alligator. I don't know. Anyways, that's a different pod for a different day.
I know. You're again in one of the parts of the world where it's really invasive species is really devastating native wildlife. Now, before we get to behavior, really quick, like Angie said, Kākāpō are herbivores, entirely vegetarian. They eat ferns and bark and roots and bulbs and fruit and seeds and leaves, and who knows what they were doing for the environment, being environmental engineers, in the North and South Island. What we're missing. But their diets do vary seasonally. What's going to be interesting when Angie gets to repro is in southern New Zealand, they breed only when the rimu trees fruit, which I think Jesse's pointed out a couple times on a couple of our hikes.
Yes, I need photos. It's a species of pine tree.
Yeah, I'll ask him. I'll ask him next time we're out birding together and say, hey, just find me one of these and I'll take pictures. But they only fruit once every 2 to 4 years. So if that's when the Kākāpō is supposed to breed, and they're only breeding when fruit's abundant, so obviously there's going to be some biological significance to that triggers hormones, maybe fat deposits, leptin, who knows what the scientists are looking at, that will trigger them to breed when seeds are, certain fruits are high and nutrients, things like that.
Yeah, I loved it. I was reading about the Kākāpō's nutrition, and they forage, right? Because they're an herbivore. And you can always tell when a Kākāpō has been foraging because they leave like half moon or crescent shaped wads of fiber, a vegetation behind, because they only pick out the good parts of whatever plant or seed or fruit that they're eating. They don't like all that fibrous material, which maybe might help answer that question about how they are able to get so fat off of a strictly herbivore diet. And so maybe if they're not consuming as much fiber, but anyway, so they leave these fiber wads behind, and researchers call it browse signs, that Kākāpōs have been browsing here. And it just reminded me of my children. Like, you can tell when my children have been,
yes,
when they've been browsing in the living room and their bedroom, because we get ants. Oh my gosh. And my car, my car, I think my car has so much food in it from my children that the ants are even like, they won't even touch it. Because sometimes in Florida, you can actually get ants in your car. That does not happen up north. But I also found it fascinating, too, that the Kākāpō has a different digestive system than in other parrots. The Kākāpō's beak has an adaptation to basically allow it to grind up food in its mouth. And the gizzard, which is like the stomach, in most birds, that's usually where the food is ground up and turned into smaller pieces and moves on to the small intestines. But in the Kākāpō, the gizzard is very much so reduced in size. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And yeah, it can store lots of fat, which is unique to birds. Maybe, I guess, penguins probably store a lot of fat. But
yeah, I would think so. We have to get to, we got July coming up, so we'll see what ocean species we're going to cover then. One thing leading you into behavior that's very interesting about the Kākāpō is how they get around, because they do live in trees. I mean, they're not out. I mean, they're ground dwelling, means they are out on the ground foraging, but they are up in the trees quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, they spend the whole day there. And in fact, they're not only just like in trees, but they spend a lot of time in the crown of trees, so high up. They're very, very good climbers. They have really strong legs. And so they lost the ability to fly, but they definitely adapted bigger, stronger legs and claws. And when they are on the ground, they can almost make like a jog, like a running gait to move across the ground. And they can climb up and down the trees very successfully. And then when they're not going up and down trees, they can cover a lot of ground during nighttime. There was one study that was observing females during breeding and nesting. And I mean, she would return back to her nest once or twice a night, walking a mile each walk, running this jog-like gait, once or twice to feed the babies, and then go back out and get more food.
Think about that for a parrot. This is a parrot that's
can't fly.
No, just running on the ground.
So
that's unique.
Yeah, it's really cool. Unique. And then of course, when they are moving along the ground, the Kākāpō will hold itself kind of in a flat or like a horizontal position where its face is closer to the ground. But if it gets alarmed or needs to see or hear something, it'll stand upright in a more typical parrot position. And then, as Chris mentioned, they will sometimes move from tree to tree or from the tree to the ground by just jumping, more or less, and parachuting as best as they can to get from where they need to. But they can climb easily up and down the tree as well. So, yeah, that's so in the trees during the day and then down on the ground and all around, covering lots of ground overnight.
Yeah, they're amazing. I mean, what other behaviors? I know that's just there's so many because they are so unique.
Oh, yes, Chris. Of course, being a parrot species, they're a very curious bird. And on these islands, they've been known to often interact with humans. They're not necessarily shy, and that they have very distinct personalities. Although they are curious to humans and interested in humans, they're not really a social bird. And we'll talk about more of that during breeding. Like they really only come together in these large lekking groups during breeding. But there's lots of documentation of playing. Young birds love to play fight with one another and just kind of develop some of these skills that they'll need later on in life as adults. They are very slow to mature. So there's reports of male and females breeding when they're 3, 4, 5 years old. But typically in a female, it's not going to be until they're 9 years old, which can be really hindering for this generation interval in regards to their conservation.
Yeah.
And when it comes to communication, Kākāpōs are definitely vocal. There hasn't been documentation, to my knowledge, of them talking like you would think of some of the African gray parrots and stuff like that. But they make a lot of high-pitched scrawing sounds and cracking sounds and wheezing calls. And then the male makes this incredible booming sound when he is in breeding season. And I'll talk about that here in a second. So the Kākāpō is definitely has some unique vocal abilities, more of which needs to be explored, I think. But at this point, they're not saying, Polly, want a cracker? Or anything like that.
Yeah.
They've focused their brain power on other things.
Well, reading about their behaviors, I mean, obviously the ground dwelling stuff was very interesting. But then when I saw the lekking, like they're the only parrot that leks. I mean, is it the only, not bird, but it was like wow, that this species does this where a lot of parrot species don't.
Yes, Chris, this blew my mind. The lekking behavior, for those of you that aren't familiar, is where males of a certain species will get together in close contact and engage in basically like a competition of courtship displays or rituals. And the whole thought behind it is that it brings females in large numbers, and then the females get to go around and pick, like at a supermarket, which male they think is the best flavor of the month that they're attracted to. So the lekking behavior is very well known in the greater sage grouse, which we need to cover, that ground dwelling bird. But it's been reported in several other bird species, reptiles, amphibians, mammals, arthropods, insects, crustaceans. So there are a lot of species that do this lekking behavior. But it is still rare and fun to talk about. And like I said, for me as a behavior dork, something I would love to study or at least get my eyes on with my little observation sheets. And yeah, not only is it a congregation of a lot of birds or animals that wouldn't be all found together in the same territory, but they're just acting like a fool. For love, a fool for love, not for any unknown reason, but at any rate. So yes, the fact that Kākāpōs have lekking behavior is incredible. And as Chris mentioned, this lekking behavior happens only anywhere from 2 to 5 years when the remu tree fruits. And so the remu is like a large evergreen coniferous tree. It's endemic to New Zealand. It's also in the group of podocarps, which, so if you're a tree person, you'll know what that means. sometimes called the red pine, but a lot of people don't use that anymore. They say rimu. But when it makes this seed, this fruit, which is obviously high in calories, it really kicks off the quote unquote breeding season for the male and female Kākāpōs. And so to do this, the males will all come together and they will basically fight to secure the best courting area. And the way that they fight is darling. They'll raise their feathers, spread their fat wings, open their beaks, show their fat feet, so raise their claws. They'll make screeching, growling noises that are very loud. And they will make contact, and they can sometimes have injuries. There are reports of even them fatal injuries sometimes. And what the competition does is the winners will get the best courts, like the best areas. Now, I don't know what makes a better area more sought after than another one. I guess you have to be a Kākāpō male with testosterone to understand this. But what will end up happening is when they win their little court area, they create a bowl. And so a bowl is literally what it sounds like. They dig down anywhere from 4 inches or so deep, and basically enough to fit like at least half of their body in it. And that's like where they hang out, and that's where they're going to do their courtship behaviors. And so once this male creates his bowl, he takes really good care of it. He cleans house. He'll make tracks of up to 50 meters in and out of his bowl, and just make sure it's really clean and that there's no sticks or debris in it, and just getting ready for any females that may choose to visit him. And the bowls are often created like near rocks or banks or tree trunks. And so I think those are the coveted areas. I'm just totally guessing. Mm-hmm. And it's thought that these bowls and the location of them can act as like amplifiers. So if it's next to a rock, it can make their vocalizations that much louder and or impressive or attractive to a female, which is a really important part of the lekking process in male Kākāpōs. They build the bowl, they guard the bowl, and then they make these booming noises, which are very low frequency. They're below 100 hertz. In these booming calls, they do it by inflating their thoracic sac. In fact, another only Kākāpōs do this, like we've seen throughout this whole podcast, is that male Kākāpōs are the only parrots that have this inflatable thoracic sac for air, which help them make this crazy loud booming noise. And by loud, I mean that this booming noise can be heard from 1 to 5 kilometers or 3 miles away if the wind is right.
That's crazy.
Think of 3 miles from your house. Like I'm thinking, okay, there's a grocery store that we go to 3 miles from my house. Like if a Kākāpō was booming in his bowl during lekking season, say that 5 times fast.
Yes.
I could hear it, right?
Well,
that's crazy.
Think about this. They live in dense forests. These forests around New Zealand, these native forests, I've sent you pictures, and we'll post more on social media. I know I have in the past of me walking around New Zealand. They're hilly. There's tons of plants and ferns and trees. So for it to boom and you can hear it that far away, that is loud, really loud for a bird, really loud. And
well, Chris, for me, the male Kākāpō wins the award for diligence because he will boom this loud booming sound continuously for up to 7 hours a night for over 3 to 5 months.
He wants to make some babies. He's motivated.
He is very motivated to attract a female to his bowl. Mm-hmm. And yes, I mean, during this time, he can lose a lot of weight, sometimes up to half of his body weight. So that's why it's important that he goes into the breeding season with these rimu tree fruits, with some chunky wings, because he's just so focused on booming and lekking and taking care of his bowl that and outcompeting other males that yes, he loses a lot of weight.
Why is it the birds? It's always the birds. I mean, I know there's other males that do mating dances and things, but it's the male birds put so much effort, and then the females come by. You see it all the time on, Planet Earth and all these all these new Netflix shows coming out. And the female's like, nah.
I know.
You're like, oh my God, he just did the most elaborate thing I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. Nah.
I know. And like, what is she looking for? I mean, it's so fascinating. Bird behavior.
Oh, behavior
is incredible. But fast forward to a male that is successful. He does attract a female. She enters his bowl area. Then he's going to really turn on the charm. He displays a courtship where he rocks from side to side. He claps with his beak. He'll turn his back to the female, spread his little chubby wings, or maybe they're not chubby after 3 to 4 months of not eating very much. But he'll spread his wings to show her. He'll walk backwards toward her, do a little bit of moonwalking, if you will. I don't think he's that cool, but in my mind he is. And then basically when she stays and doesn't run away, as Chris mentioned, they'll breed. Basically once they mate, the female turns around and leaves the male, and that's the end of his job. Except for, depending on how far along it is during the breeding season and probably how skinny he is, he'll continue booming. He doesn't stop there. He just keeps
like
booming away.
Like a DJ like doing his dun 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 dun.
Yep.
Oh, female. Okay, stop. All right, I'm done. Dun 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 dun. Next one.
100%. Exactly. Yep. He just wants to attract the next female. And so it's just so funny. But yeah, that's it. So he spends all of that energy, all of those months, all of those boom calls, thousands per night. The nice little dance. Who knows how many times he has to dance before he scores a female. But that's it. That's his only contribution to parenting. So it's an important one, right? So we have to give him that.
None of us would be here if we weren't half a dad. So Angie, really quick, and before we even got started, you were talking about a good project that you're doing some ungulate behavior research, which sounds very interesting.
Yes, I'm back in the peripheral saddle again. We're going to go look at some grubby zebra behavior up at White Oak here this next week, and I'm helping assist with a pilot study because I love it there and I love grubby zebras. So
you introduced me to this to studying herbivores behavior scientifically and stuff like that, which I found fascinating, but it's boring as all get out.
You stop it, Chris.
All they do is eat. That's what I tell.
That's beautiful. The sound of munching of ungulates chewing their grass.
Why are you not a bird expert? Like, study this behavior.
Well,
like, how fun is that?
I mean, I probably would do things differently now after having all this exposure. Me too. Oh my gosh.
Me too. I'd stay in the ocean. I'd be studying ocean. I don't know. I'm glad I do what I do. I mean, we understand physiology, we understand science, and all that genetics and biochemistry we needed. But still, like when you're talking behavior, and then you were talking about going to do these grubby zebras, I'm like, why aren't you coming here to study Kākāpō and the Kia and how intelligent they are, and to sign some behavioral studies with that? So I'll get you guys moved down here at some point.
I was just saying,
come on, John.
Find somebody to pay me.
And John, right? I'll get John a zoo job down here. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, so so here we go. She's pregnant. She goes and lays her eggs. What happens?
Yep. So the female, she has a nest, and it is in the ground. And I was thinking about that, and I'd love a bird expert on here. I understand that they are on the ground, but I wish she would put her bird nest in trees.
Well, there's no reason to. There's no reason to.
There was no reason to until predators moved in.
1,000 years ago, there was no reason to.
I know, darn it. And so,
life was good, yeah.
But she'll make a deep burrow under boulders or between tree roots, and she tries to conceal it. And she's very faithful about incubating her eggs. But because there is no male parental care, the female does have to leave those eggs unattended every night to search for food, right? During incubation. And the eggs are incubated for 30 days. So they might get snatched, things like that, or before they move to the islands, of course. And I should mention too that a Kākāpō female will usually lay about 1 to 2 eggs. And after a month, the chicks will hatch. They're very altricial, so they're covered in like white grayish down, but their skin's really pink, and it's easy to see their eyes are closed, and they're just, they're very dependent on mom. They get their feathers by about 70 days, and it takes around 3.5 months or so for the Kākāpō chicks to be ready to leave the nest. And the juvenile Kākāpō coloration is going to be somewhat duller green than the adults, and a little bit different with the black and yellow bars that are present in their feathers. They do have shorter tails and wings and beaks as well when they're younger. It takes them a while to mature, as I mentioned. I think that's a really, really key point for their conservation. Once again, there's reports of females not breeding until they're 9 to 11 years of age. And then when they're only breeding anywhere from 3 to 5 years, one chick, and then that chick is vulnerable to predators and just life in general. So how many chicks actually make it to adulthood? I read maybe there's like 60%. That might be better now in some of the more conservation islands that they're on, where they're being a little bit more protected. So yeah, when we talk about having their numbers rebound, it's not going to be overnight. There's just no way. Very slow generation interval.
I think that's why they're looking at different strategies too. If we can put them and I don't know yet. I'd like to talk to an expert, but placing them at safe havens on the mainland or other islands where there's less competition. When she's when she's shopping for daddy, it's not 50 males, but she's got a small handful to pick from.
Right.
And then she can make a decision. I want to breed with him, and hopefully we can propagate them, at a quicker rate than they are now.
Yeah. Then there was an issue too with their sex ratio for a while, where there was just mostly males, and a lot of that researchers think was due to diet. When they are on some of these conservation islands and stuff, they're supplemented to help make sure that they stay alive and are healthy. But the thought is this whole, it's called sex allocation evolutionary theory, where when a female has enough resources or plentiful, or she is chubby, or in times of good eating, that she'll produce male offspring. And whereas if her nutrition and her resources are a little less uniform and less consistent, and she's underweight, that the body will recognize that and produce female offspring. And so researchers took this to heart, and they didn't, they didn't completely stop supplementing the diets of these, critically endangered birds that they had been studying on these conservation islands. But they did make sure to not overfeed them. And they actually, since they've been doing that, they've been getting more of a 50-50 sex ratio split. Yeah. So that's good. And that's why when we talk about research being so critical from all different angles, from nutrition to genetics to translocation to cortisol and hormones to disease. Oh my gosh, this poor Kākāpō is, a population with a bottleneck effect, right?
Massive.
With the, with issues that come with bottleneck species and starting and having such like a low population number, and then breeding them, is their genetic diversity isn't low, much lower than where we'd want it to be. And so, a single disease or something can wipe them out. Yeah. So there's a lot, and that's why we need to study them and make sure that they don't get diseases. And so, it's just, it's a really tough, hard conservation fight for these birds, but I'm just so in love and applauding the New Zealanders, the Kiwis, for their efforts and the strides that they have made for the Kākāpō. It really is like you said, it's a really feel-good story, and a really, just really setting the stage for how other countries, especially island nations, could and should help keep their critically endangered species alive and thriving.
No, and the public support is massive here for it. So, the people here really are supporting, preserving New Zealand wildlife and our wild spaces here and our wild species and native species. So it has very strong public support, which helps support policy. So then the politicians can feel emboldened. Okay, well, this is important to the people, and they sell it too. And so that's where our Department of Conservation has done, an outstanding job saving this animal, saving this species from the brink. Because they are critically endangered.
Yeah, absolutely. Critically endangered. They are not out of the woods yet, not even close. But yeah, New Zealanders, the government, the researchers, the community there has been really fighting for these birds. And it is, I do think when we revisit this species in 5 years or whenever, I think we're going to have even more good news to report. I'm very, very hopeful. And a lot of that has to do with the Kākāpō Recovery Project, which is my organization of the week. And they can be found at www.doc.gov. Well, I'll just have Chris put the,
yes.
put the website on the show notes.
Yeah,
it's very long.
Yeah.
Or you can just Google Kākāpō Recovery Program. But it's awesome. It basically combines scientists, rangers, volunteers, and donors to protect the critically endangered kakapo. And they have a wonderful group on Facebook that I love called Kākāpō Recovery. So check them out. If you are in New Zealand or even not New Zealand like myself, there's several ways you can get involved, and we'll put that on our show notes as well. But they have volunteer opportunities. You can help with funding. If you own a business, you can help raise money and support. So there's just a lot that you can do, whether you are local in New Zealand, which would be super cool on the ground, but even just from far away with a few clicks of your mouse and, help them financially, especially as Chris mentioned, if they want to continue to grow this population, they're going to need to move to the mainland and help protect them there. And that's not going to be cheap.
No, and if that happens, I will be wherever they're at.
Yes, yes, 100%.
Listening to those males booming.
Oh, boom, 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 boom. And it doesn't like that. It's more like, I would play it, but it was actually so low frequency. It's almost to our ears. You can hear it, but it's very very low. Like you could probably do it with your male voice a little bit better than me. But yeah, it's low and deep, but still beautiful.
I can't make 4 miles. Sorry, whatever it
That's
was.
True.
3 miles away. No. Well, the conservation tip of the week, talking about that, the Kākāpō Recovery Project does have Kākāpō bird cams. They're turned off now because the fledglings have left the nest, but they were on, and people were very much. It was all in social media here, where we were watching the Kākāpō birds, and them hatch and everything. So support bird cams, like go out and look. There's eagle cams, and in your neck of the woods this year. It's May, so most birds have probably hatched, right? They've laid their eggs, and
yes, and even most fledgling have fledged.
Yeah. So when they're around, support bird camps, share them, share this podcast. It's just funny. It's living down here in this end of the world, pretty far from Angie. It's like, remember we talked about La Nina a few months back? Like we're feeling the effects of La Nina. We're like in this drought right now, but Australia is getting hammered with rain, and just all of this in the podcast that we talk about. I guess my point is, go outside, enjoy where you live in the world. Nature and conservation begins in your backyard. Look up, start watching birds if you haven't, and start enjoying it, and let that energize you so you can fight and just spread the knowledge. You don't have to make a career out of it, but social media, share it with your friends, tell these stories, talk about the Kākāpō. Come see me in New Zealand. Send us an email, allcreaturespod@gmail.com. Tell us your stories. But if you come to New Zealand and you want to go meet up at the sanctuary and go bird watching, or wherever you are in this country, in the North Island, I'll try to meet up with you. But we're in this together, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So
we are definitely. It takes a village, and all of us are conservation heroes. By listening to this podcast, you're doing your part. And if a lot of what we're saying gets that fire going in your belly, there's more you can do. And it doesn't have to be being, a field biologist or a zookeeper. There's so many different ways to help. And I, through social media and email, talked with a lot of people each week and we just have this network going and talk about ways to help. I send them articles from Google Scholar because I have access to those, and if they need them, and we talk about how to be a better board member at their local zoo, and we talk about career, like, well, what should I do with my career? And so anyways, definitely reach out to us. Let us know if you have a favorite species you want us to cover. Definitely check out our Facebook All Creatures podcast group. We share a lot of articles in there and just get excited about animals and conservation, the good and the bad, because the good excites us, and then the bad kind of gets that fire going in our belly and makes us want to fix it and help in any way we can. And so, yeah, I mean, nature and animals are where it's at. So let's keep working together.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for listening. We're getting to our list. We've got a good list of species coming in July. We've got Plastic Free July, so we'll really focus on the ocean. We have a couple big species on there that I cannot wait to cover. So just stay tuned, and thank you for listening and supporting us. All those 5-star reviews, I did read them the other day on iTunes. I just was overwhelmed, and I was like, I just want to see, if we had any new reviews. So thank you. It really. It helps drive us. So please keep the comments coming, the emails coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Listen, learn, share. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.